Academy today and also at Fordyce Primary School to this special interview and question and answer session with one of Scotland and Team GB's top athletes. As one of the world's top female cyclists, our guest today has secured the following, and I am going to refer to my notes because there's so many: a multiple British and European champion, an Olympic medalist, and now after the 2023 UCI World Championships in Glasgow and across Scotland, she is a double world champion, individually last year in France in the points race, and most recently in Glasgow itself, just in August past, where she secured the marathon gold with her teammate Eleanor Barner. Everybody, please welcome Neah Evans. Neah, thank you so much for coming along today. Such a varied and long career already that you've had. So the aim of this first half is for me to take you through how we got to this point, and give the children at both schools a kind of overview of what it's taken to get to this point and to secure that list of achievements that you've got already. And then the second half, we will invite via Miss Booth at Banff Academy and via Callum at Fordyce Primary School for the pupils to put forward their questions and pinpoint you down on some of these things that we maybe don't know about you and about your career as well. So I guess the best place to start is always at the start. So in terms of sport, you know, thinking back to your earliest memories, where did it start for you?
So I started, I guess I was always active as a kid. I had two older brothers, so we used to just play a lot together. It wasn't always that kind of scripted, the sport we did. We just kind of messed about. I really was into kind of horse riding as a kid. That was my main thing. That's what I thought I was going to do when I was older. I'll get a job and I'll keep riding horses, if you like. I never thought I'd be a cyclist. I did have a bike. I think it'd probably been one of my brother's ones that, like, as they grew out of it, I grew into it. But like, I wasn't a cyclist. I popped around on a bike, but I really wasn't a cyclist. At university, I started off kind of doing horse riding through one of the uni clubs, and I was still riding my own horse at home. And she actually had an accident and ended up. So I was at vet school, Glasgow University Vet School, and the day, I still remember it, the day before my first exam, horse had an accident and ended up in the vet hospital. And it was one of those kind of moments of, right, okay, obviously sorted her out. But I really liked being active. I really liked having the sport. I thought it was so beneficial for just getting away from studies and being a student and having this outlet. So it was kind of back to the drawing board. What am I going to do to keep being active? But also I'm a student, so what can I do, if you like, on the cheap? And my mum encouraged me to get into running, which made perfect sense of, you know, all you need is a pair of trainers and off you go kind of thing. So I joined the university running club, and it was fantastic. It was one of those kind of moments of growing up. You interact with people at school and you make friends there, but to join a group of people who are like so like-minded, and they're there because of this one common interest rather than because, you know, their families live in the same area. It's kind of completely kind of different thing to what I'd experienced before. So joining the running club was pretty huge on kind of two levels, because there was the physical running. I'm pretty competitive, as you would probably guess. So I had the competitive side of the running and the racing, but there was this kind of huge social and community side, which was the kind of first time I'd really experienced that. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about sport. So I loved being part of the running club, and it was fantastic. And then towards the end of my university, I ended up kind of getting ill and injured, and yeah, I just hadn't really been looking after myself, but still pushing myself to run quite hard. I'd been enjoying the student lifestyle quite a lot, trying to study on the side of it, and it was too much. And at this point is where I kind of discovered cycling, and I'd ridden a bike, as I said, as a kid, never really thought much of it. I thought cycling was one of these sports that you had to pick up from like a young age to be a cyclist. But my dad, who'd always cycled, encouraged me, said, "Oh, you'd actually be really good at cycling." And I was like, "Oh yeah, whatever, Dad. Don't like it. Doesn't doesn't appeal to me. But he kind of convinced me into it, and I did it just to continue to try and keep my fitness. While I couldn't run, I found that I could cycle. So I thought, right, if I cycle, that will keep me fitter, so that when I get back to being able to kind of run, I'll come in at a better level. And this is the competitive element is always there. So we did that and really quite enjoyed it. And, oh, I can see there's more to the cycling than I'd appreciated. And he booked me to do my accreditation at the Chris Hoy Velodrome.
So that's a great point to stop at the moment. So let's reflect back on from that. That's a great summary in terms of our guests today back at the two schools. So we've got Miss Booth in our PE class, which I understand is an all-girl class at the moment, which reflects really well back on last week's Women and Girls Sport Week across the country. And we've Callum from Active Schools Aberdeenshire, who covers the Banff network with the pupils at Fordyce Primary School. And then my own role, so Malcolm Grant, I am outdoor activity officer with Live Live Outdoors. And that covers Cycle Aberdeenshire and links to active schools, to all our schools, and across the whole cycling population, really in Aberdeenshire as best we can. So across that broad area of work that we all do, sport is at the heart of it. So you've kind of given a great overview of how you came through that sporting options and then switched from running to cycling. Before we speak about the cycling aspect, the balance of your career as a vet, and we know from other athletes in Scotland, so Laura Muir being a great example of that ability to balance, world class or elite sport with a career. Clearly being a vet has got an extensive study period. How did you balance that in the initial stages before as cycling came towards you? How were you balancing exercise and sport versus study?
So it's quite funny. A lot of people obviously liken me to Laura. We knew each other at university, so it's a fair comparison. But we actually had very different, I would say, university experiences. So when she came to university, she was already quite an established runner, and running was probably her priority. And obviously, getting through vet school was on par with that. But she was already like a top athlete. And for her, it was very much a juggle of being a vet, or a vet student and an athlete. So she had, in some sense, a harder juggle because she was a serious athlete at this stage. For me at university, I wasn't. I was very much still in the hobby bracket. I loved it and I took it. I wanted to do well, but I had no pressures, no expectation, or anything that I did was because I put it on myself. So I know that she actually split some of her years. So she stayed at vet school for longer, but it then meant she didn't have so much academic stress. So I think she did Rio, and I think that year, I'm not sure if she took that year out or only did half the subjects so that she could focus. And I think that's a really good example of how much it takes to do sport at a high level and also to do a hard academic degree. That she wasn't able to, although she balanced them, there were compromises between both. And then I think at a later stage, she didn't go to the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games because she had her finals. So she's like, I need to focus on my finals. Whereas I came through university, I would like to say that the number one was being a vet. I think, if I'm honest, it was actually the student lifestyle. I was very much your typical student, enjoyed a night out. Then it was being a vet, and then kind of sport underpinned that. So my sporting kind of journey through university and up to that stage was, it's a hobby. I'm serious about it because I'm competitive, but I've no pressure. I'm not representing Scotland. I'm not representing GB. I'm not trying to get qualification for events. It's just something that I'm doing as an outlet, and because I really enjoy it. I love sport. I like being active. It suits my my personality type. And as I said, with the running club, I'd find this group of like-minded people that we just, sometimes you would go, right, we're going to do a hard interval session, and other times you're like, you know what, I just need to go for a jog and have a chat with a friend. And that was my kind of student sporting background. So it is really funny. If you look, between me and Laura, we both came out of Glasgow Vet School with veterinary degrees, but got them in very different ways. And we both went on to, I think we both got silver in Tokyo Olympics. So, we've got the same end results, but we've come about it in such contrasting ways. I think she's always been a runner. She's always kind of, yeah, she was a club runner and worked her way up through the ranks. Whereas for me, being a cyclist, I came in relatively very late compared to the most of the people that I race against and most other athletes. So my time in sport is actually relatively short. Yes, I've always been active, and as I said, I've always done sport, but I've never done it to a professional level. So I think it's a really nice way of almost kind of highlighting there isn't one pathway to sport and success. Now, obviously, when I talk about sport, I'm talking to get to the elite level. But the beauty of it is, if you enjoy it, you don't have to be elite level. You can just be going and doing park runs or club level or whatever it is. It's just being active and getting out there. So I think it's quite a nice comparison between the two of us of, the different things you can do with sport and actually then still go on to achieve, but such different pathways into it.
I was just going to say that I think for the pupils who are listening in Bamford-Dice, you've just given an explanation that just shows the very different pathways. And we did another event last week with a team you know very well, which is the Alba Development Road team, who are also based in Aberdeenshire, and very similar stories from the riders from that elite team. About the varied backgrounds, and there was also a vet in that team, funnily enough. But yeah, it was good for the pupils at Gordon schools and Huntly to hear similar varied stories, that it isn't just one way to get there, that there's lots of different ways to get there. So that's really good. You've explained that in terms of the difference between you and Laura Muir, given obviously Laura's prominence, in athletics. So let's go back to that initial trip to the velodrome for what is called an accreditation session to basically make sure that you're safe to go on the track. So do you want to explain just what happened next?
Yeah, so my dad booked me in for this accreditation session. I had never been in a velodrome before. I think I'd maybe seen some track racing, but when he's been watching it, the Olympics or something, and I've kind of seen it in the background, but never really watched it, hadn't really paid that much attention. And if you've never been in a velodrome, it's a wooden track and it's got really steep sides. So I think it's 40, I can't remember how many degrees angle. I'm going to say 45 degrees. Every back velodrome is actually slightly different. So it's a really steep banking. It's the kind of thing you stand at the top and you look down and you go, oh, that's quite a long way down. So the velodrome itself is quite a cool thing to actually just ride. And to ride the velodrome, you've got a kind of special bike, which doesn't have any brakes, and it's a fixed gear. So with a fixed gear, it means when the wheels are going round, your pedals are also going round. So when you're pedaling forward, that's fine. You're pedaling away, the wheels go round, everything's fine. If you want to stop or slow down, what you do is you actually try to back pedal. You never actually manage to back pedal, but you go through that sensation, and that's how you stop or slow down. So I'd never been on a fixed gear bike before. I'd never had clip-in pedals, so your feet are kind of attached to the pedals. So it was one of these of, I went in, didn't really know what to expect. As I said, the banking, when you actually see it for the first time, is like, oh, that's actually really quite steep. On his bike, and I'd never had a fixed gear. And I was just like, well, let's give it a go. And I went in with pretty low expectations, if I'm honest, of I'll just try this, it'll be fun, something different, probably a fun story to tell at the pub, if it goes well or badly. And actually, I loved it. I really didn't expect to, but I came off and I was like, that's really fun. You go pretty fast for not very much effort, because you can kind of swoop up and down the banking. So if you know physics, obviously if you're at the top of quite a high banking and then you turn left and go down it, you're going quite fast at the bottom of it. And it was amazing. I just found it really fun, really exhilarating. And I didn't understand. There was a lot of people quite timid and almost a bit scared with it. And I was like, the faster you go, the more fun it is. So for the accreditation, you actually have to do a series of 4, and each one gets progressively harder. And then once you've done the 4, if you're like accredited, and then you can ride at any velodrome in the UK in like kind of free drop-in sessions. And then they seem that you're safe enough that you know what you're doing, you're able to look around, you're not going to crash into other people, you've got basic bike handling skills. So yeah, I did that, and I just loved it. I thought going into it was a one-off, and I didn't want to do it. If someone hadn't booked it and pushed me into doing it, I wouldn't have made that opportunity. Which is why I tend to be quite a big advocate for giving everything a go, because you don't know what you're going to like. You know, at school age, if you'd said, "Oh, you're going to be a cyclist," I would have laughed and been like, "Absolutely not a chance. Never going to happen." And now I'm making a career out of it. So it is amazing how things change and develop if you give them a chance.
So we know the story now of all the titles that I mentioned at the start, and we know, all being well, next year's a big year because of the Paris Olympics. But can you explain, from those initial accreditation sessions at the Velodrome in Glasgow, how did you then, how did the door open to Team GB? How long a process was that? How did it happen?
So again, pretty unconventional process. Going right back to the accreditation. So I did the accreditation, and then I was doing a little bit of kind of track league, and I was quite fortunate that I kind of fell into just conversation with a couple of other younger cyclists, and they were invited along to some Scottish cycling sessions. This was just after the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow, so 2014. And Scottish cycling, their main athletes were all having a break and time away after the Commonwealth Games. So they kind of opened up their sessions and said, listen, people who aren't on the programme, but are keen and showing some talent and ability, we're just going to open it up. So it was almost kind of invite only, word of mouth, to come along to these sessions. So one of the girls who I'd been doing a little bit with had kind of, she'd taken me under her wing to some extent. I think she's just pleased to have someone to train with. And again, it was like-minded people of just, we were having fun. So she said, "Oh, I've been invited along, and they said if I knew anyone, and I said about you, do you fancy it?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's give it a go. Got nothing to lose, be a bit of fun." So I did a couple of these Scottish cycling sessions, and again, didn't have any expectations. It was just like, this is good fun. And there's smarter coaches who know much more about cycling who are giving me some pointers and some tips, and I'll just see where it goes. And about the same time, I had finished with vet school, and I was looking to get a job, and I went along for a job interview. And it was one of these moments that I can look back and see that it's now like pivotal in how it's shaped my life. But at the time, didn't have a clue. Went for this job interview, and I thought it was just going to be a practice job interview. Didn't particularly want the job because it was working with small animals, and I wanted to work with horses. But I went along, and I thought I was just going to do it, learn some interview technique, and then I would apply for more serious jobs in the future. And it was also to keep my parents off my back, if I'm completely honest, because they're like, "Okay, you need to get a job now." And I was like, whatever. I'll apply, and that'll keep you happy. So I did that, and I got offered the job there and then, and I was a bit like, "Oh, I don't really want this job, if I'm honest." And just before I'd gone for the interview, the people at Scottish Cycling had said, "Listen, if you can come along to the Tuesday and Thursday afternoon sessions, you're welcome to come and train with us, because we think you've got a bit of talent, and we're happy to give you that support and just giving me track time." So I said to my boss, if you like, I said, "Right, I'll take the job if I can, manipulate the work schedule a little bit so I can do these track sessions." And he said, "Okay, on the condition that you start on Monday." And I was like, "Okay, I guess I got a job now." And it's one of these really funny moments, because if he had said no, or I got one of the jobs that I thought I wanted, I would have given up on cycling, because it was just a really fun hobby. But I didn't know how far I could get with it. I didn't know that I was actually really naturally very talented at it. I just thought it was a really fun hobby. But because the way it panned out that I was able to do that, I trained with Scottish Cycling. So I did that for about a year and a half. I actually started off as a sprinter on their sprint program, and then I managed to reduce my hours, and I went part-time. And at about the same time, British Cycling, or shortly afterwards, British Cycling, they'd seen me doing some races, and obviously they were intrigued, because they normally work with much more conventional models of, they get school, they go around schools and they kind of talent ID, or they've had kind of age group programs. So people from, I don't know, 14 or even younger have been racing, and there've been coaches watching them, and they've just watched them work up through the ranks, and they get onto a central based program down in Manchester, which is an academy program. I think most people get on that when they're about kind of 18, but they've already had, you know, lots of interaction with British cycling or regional cycling coaches for many years up to that point. And then they get onto academy, and then if they do really well, they do about 3 years on academy, and then they get up onto the podium program. And that's, if you like, the athletes that are in line to go to the Olympics. Obviously, all these programs are bigger than the number of people that actually go to the event, but it's this kind of pathway, and it obviously gets harder and harder the farther up pathway you go. So they'd never ever had someone come onto the podium program who hadn't been part of the British cycling pathway. So it was a little bit of a kind of unknown, because they watched me as an older athlete. You know, I was older than all the academy people. I was older than a lot of the podium people. And although I had very little racing history, they could see that I had a lot of talent, and they said they gave me a trial. And this was about a year before the Commonwealth Games in Gold Coast. And they said, you know, we'll give you a spot on the programme. And obviously, as I've been coming through the Scottish cycling programme and been getting better results and improving, and I could see a huge change in my cycling, I was still very much enjoying it, but I saw myself as a vet who had picked up a very expensive, serious hobby on the side. But I would still have labelled my, you know, if someone walked up to me in the street and said, "What do you do?" I go, "I'm a vet." But I spend all my free time cycling. So all of a sudden, I got this opportunity that I did a little bit of testing with them, and they took me on camp, like a training camp in Mallorca, which, you know, everyone else was like, "Oh, it's really hard work," and I'm going, "This is like holiday, because I don't have to work. I can just focus on the training," which is something I'd never done before. I thought it was amazing. So yeah, so they turned around and said, "Listen, we'll give you a spot in the program. You got to move to Manchester." And again, I went in and I spoke to my boss, and I was basically like, "I think I'm going to do this." And he was like, "Oh, you'd be nuts if you don't." And I really, at that point, still thought I'd made, you know, this was a really good stepping stone to get to the Commonwealth Games and be there in the best physical shape. And I thought I was going to maybe take like a year out of being a vet, and then I do the Commonwealth Games, you know, I just participate. It'd be an amazing experience, and then I go back to being a vet. And that's what I did. Apart from, I came away with 2 medals and a lot more confidence in my ability as a cyclist, and kind of said, "Oh, right, what's the next target? What's the next thing?" And it was the European Championships, which were out in Glasgow. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know what? I can actually maybe make it to the Olympics. And it's been such a weird process, because as you're living it, you almost don't realize how much you've achieved and how far you've come from being like such a rookie cyclist. You know, Rio Olympics, I didn't watch the track cyclist because of the track cycling, because I was working. London Olympics, I don't even know about track cycling. Tokyo Olympics, I'm competing there myself. And it's really bizarre when you reflect back and look at like the journey that I've had, of how unconventional it's been, and yet it's almost seemed fairly easy. Of I've just kind of taken it one step at a time, of like, right, this is my target, this is the next thing. Oh well, I've achieved this. I wonder if I could achieve the next thing, and it's just kept going and kept escalating. Never when I started out would I have thought I would get to the Olympics. It hadn't even, you know, I'd say it hadn't crossed my mind. Obviously, you have daydreams like, "Oh, that'd be incredible," but I never actually thought it would be something that I could achieve. And I think that's one of the beautiful kind of things that sport can give you, is it gives you like the social, as I said, with the running club, of like just hanging out with like-minded people and doing this stuff together, and that shared experience. And then it gives you so many kind of other skills of, you know, planning ahead, the confidence within yourself, building up, looking for targets, trying to push yourself to the next thing. And for me, because I'm competitive, I really like that side of it, of can I get, you know, always trying to look better, always trying to be faster, stronger, whatever it is, always trying to find these improvements. And I really like that about sport.
Yeah. So just before we move into my last bit here, and then we'll get the kids involved with our questions. Again, just for the benefit of all the pupils, we've been very lucky this year, and we're going to be lucky next year as well. And that Neah has performed a role which she has helped us extensively with from very remote locations around the world as our Cycle Aberdeenshire Women and Girls Cycling Ambassador. And lots of videos online that have shown Neah's travels around the world this year, titles, her home life, what it takes to maintain that balance between winning at the top level, training to be at the top level. Everything is taken for Neah to get to the point where she is just now, and that real big potential pinnacle next year in Paris at the Olympics. So Neah, just reflecting back on everything, it's probably 2017 being that pivotal year where things started to move forward for you. We've now come out of the biggest world championship event ever in the world in Glasgow with all those combined events. What did it mean to win? I know it was to explain to the pupils again, it was a joint medal in the Madison, which is a team event, a two-person event on the track, and you did that with Eleanor Barker. But how did it feel for you individually, having studied in Glasgow? Again, to explain to pupils, you're an Aberdeenshire resident, you were born in Glasgow, you stay in Aberdeenshire, splitting your time between there and obviously your race base and your training base in England. How did Glasgow feel to win that medal?
Oh, it's one of these, every so often people ask you, like, what's the highlight of a career? And it's going to be, I normally rattle off a few because I can never make up my mind which one the best one is. But this is definitely up there because a world title, it's something, you say, I'm a world champion. Everyone knows that means you're the best in the world at that particular event. So it's like that in itself is absolutely huge. And then you've got this kind of extra layer, the fact that it's in Glasgow. So it's the velodrome that I learned to ride on. If that velodrome didn't exist, I wouldn't be a track cyclist. I wouldn't be sat here speaking to you all today. And there was such a moment of when we won, obviously the crowd erupted in such a huge atmosphere. And you look up and you realize that you recognize a lot of kind of faces in the crowd because they've been following kind of cycling and sport in Scotland in the velodrome. It's a lot of kind of familiar faces. And it was almost, for me personally, it was huge, and it's what I'd been working towards for, since last World Championships. But I've been since I found out it was in Glasgow, it's been such an aspiration to win a world title in front of a home crowd. And it's almost, there was then another layer of trying to go, I only got into kind of cycling because I got, not forced, but strongly convinced to go to this accreditation. And part of me is kind of going, who else out there could discover track cycling and find the love and the passion? And definitely when you get success at an event, there's much more media around it and then much more exposure. And, I've got that hope that someone somewhere will have watched it and gone, you know what, I want to give that a go. And I think that's one of the things that made having a home world championships so special, in that there's so much more exposure. And it's not to say that people need to go out and aspire to be world champion and aspire to be Olympic champion. Go for it, aim high. But also just give it a go. And it doesn't have to be cycling. It could be any sport that you've thought about and thought, it looks quite fun on TV, but I've never thought about, trying it. My advice is always give it a go. And even the sport that you think, oh, I don't think it's for me, how I felt about cycling, don't knock it. It really, it will change your life. And I've been particularly fortunate that I've managed to have my veterinary career. Worked a bit as a vet, and I realised what having a proper job, if you like, is like. And now I'm off gallivanting riding my bike. So
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly delighted, from a Cycle Aberdeenshire point of view, and on behalf of Live With Aberdeenshire and Aberdeenshire Council, it's fantastic to have followed you this year, and we're really looking forward to that journey continuing through to Paris next summer as well. I'm going to ask one more question, but I'm going to use that to give Callum and Ms. Booth a chance to start typing in some questions to the chat from the pupils at our two schools. So my covering question, to give them time, is you kind of maybe covered some of this already, but what does it mean to you to be a female athlete at the top of your sport? So ignore the fact that it's cycling. Just how does it make you feel looking back? And again, last week, Women and Girls Sport Week, you know, we've seen some stories this week nationally about, again, a decline in PE participation from girls. And, you know, certainly Callum and myself with a background in active schools, we're fully aware of that. And I'm sure Ms. Booth sees it as well in a school setting. We're all working towards participation for all. To keep young people involved in sports so they can either enjoy it as a career as you have found, or simply enjoy it as a health and wellbeing opportunity as they get older. But to come back to that question, what does it mean to you to be a female athlete at the top of your sport?
I mean, it means a lot. I wouldn't do it if I didn't enjoy it. And I do it because I personally enjoy it and it's what I want to do with my life at this stage. But off the side of it, I go, if I can encourage other people to either persevere with sport, try a new sport, or just be more active, to me, it's a lovely thing that is kind of associated with it. Because, you know, when I was at school, I probably wasn't one of the PE. I definitely wasn't the PE teacher's favourite. I wasn't particularly brilliant at PE. I was doing other things, you know, I was horse riding, and I was just, if you like, another people. I dare say, if you'd lined us all up and said to the PE teacher, like, out of all these people, who's going to go to Olympics? No chance. Wouldn't fit me. And if I'm honest, my experience of PE in school wasn't brilliant. But my personality type, it didn't put me off, but it didn't particularly encourage me to try different sports. And I look back and realize that it was a completely wasted opportunity. And I wish that I'd had more exposure to different sports. Just because it's fun to try something different. And as I said, you don't know what you're going to be good at. And you learn a lot of skills in sport. You know, if you do team sports, you learn how to work with other people, potentially people you don't particularly like, which, you know, growing up, working in a work environment, sometimes you have to do that. But it's being able to, you get these skills that you don't realize that you're developing when you're doing sport, which I think are hugely important for you in later life. And as I said, you know, find a sport that you do find fun. And there is definitely some stigmatism about you've got to be the best, you've got to be incredible at this, you know, you can't, you know, what's the point in doing gymnastics unless you can do, like, you know, backflips or whatever. If you enjoy it and you're just doing cartwheels and handstands, crack on. You know, don't let other people's judgment put you off. And there's that kind of you know, people running like 5Ks and you didn't do it very fast or whatever. You ran it faster than the person that didn't even start, you know? And it's trying to find something that you enjoy and brings you happiness. And I'll be completely honest, there's some days as a cyclist it's really tough and you're going, I don't really fancy it. You know, you've got 4 hours to do, it's blowing a gale, it's pouring down with rain, you're cold, you're wet, your kit's still damp from the day before, you're tired. It's not really, you're like, oh, why am I doing this? And then you get out the door and then actually something happens, you're like, oh, this is quite fun, or you've met up with a friend and you're having a good chat. So it's kind of going, don't be afraid. You know, if you're having a bad day, don't think, oh, well, I'm not good at this sport because I don't want to do it today. You're going to have peaks and troughs. That's just a fact of life. And if you do try a new sport, you don't have to be amazing at it. If you get enjoyment, that's enough. And it might take you a long time to pick up, you know, a new skill set in a new sport, but you've got to persevere. You've got to give it a chance. You know, you're not going to be world class on day one. I mean, if you are, fair play.
So the questions are rattling in now on the right hand side. So the first one, we'll let you speak a bit more in detail about the rest. I think we're going to challenge you to give us those. Just give us the first answer because it comes into your head. Nadine at Banff Academy is asking, do you follow a strict nutrition and training plan? I don't remember seeing many cakes in the photographs you shared with me this year from training camps or around the world.
Well, you know, everyone has a moment. Training plan, yeah, really strict. We've got this online program that's called Training Peaks, and my coach sets the training. I log on every day. Well, I log on and look ahead, but every day is mapped out what I'm going to do, the session, how long, the intensity. Yeah, really pretty vigorous. And yeah, there's like the way the thing works. It gives you like color grading if you're compliant, not compliant, whatever. So the training is pretty strict. I can tell you what I'm going to be doing in about 6 months' time, roughly. You know, what kind of phase of training, whether it's strength focused, skill focused, endurance, anaerobic. Yeah, it's pretty well regimented. Obviously, there needs to be give and take if you're having a good day, a bad day. There's margins of error, but there's a constant flow. Nutrition wise, I used to work with a very good nutritionist, and she would go 80-20. So 80% really good, 20% get away with. As I lead into major competitions, I tend to be a bit stricter, a bit more controlled with what I'm doing. But one of the nice things about being a track cyclist is I don't have to, there's a lot of body image stuff, and cycling power to weight is a huge thing if you race on the road, because obviously the more power you have, the quicker you go. But if you're really heavy, then it's much harder to go up hills. So that's why if you watch road racing, you'll see that they're all very, very skinny. As a track rider, it's not power to weight, it's power to drag that's the important thing. So that's how aerodynamic you are. So we don't have to be quite so conscious about being super, super lean, and we can be much more careful about making sure we actually fuel the training appropriately, so that we can get the most adaptations from it, which means we can be a little bit more relaxed. So most of the time, pretty on it. You know, if I do like a really big training day, got to eat more for that. If I'm on a rest day, I'll eat, you know, less and have more like salad-based stuff. And if I'm coming up to race, then obviously I'm going to eat lots and lots of carbohydrates after the gym session, focus more on protein. So there's a lot behind it, but the more you do it, the more it almost becomes kind of second nature. And yeah, I will have a coffee and a cake. If I've got like a chilled bike ride, every so often we do like a coffee and cake bike ride, which are really rather fun.
So
Yeah.
we'll set you that challenge for the next year with your vlogs with ourselves, that we have to get a cake from every country in the photograph so we can spread it around. So let's move on to these questions, because these will be good for a quick, not giving you much time to think, and just tell us what comes off the top of your head. Emily at Banff Academy, which other female athlete inspires you?
So this was actually a little bit, I was going to say sad. My mum, she actually went to the Olympics as a cross-country skier, and she had very little help and support. She funded herself. She gave up a job as a teacher, actually, to go and move to Norway to work in a hotel and clean toilets effectively. So she'd do that in the morning, get over and done with, and then go out and train. And she made it to the Olympics, which I think is pretty cool.
Perfect, great answer. Olivia, Banff Academy, what kind of music motivates you?
I listen to, so I've got like a warm-up playlist, and I've got two kind of different ones. One's Avicii and one is who is it? Can't remember what it's called now. Above and Beyond. So I can have like a really like get pumped up, and a slightly more chill one, because when I actually get to races, though I want to get like adrenaline and in the zone, I don't want to get too excited before the start of the race. So I go between those two.
Perfect. Maria at Banff Academy, you might have answered some of this, but you might have to kind of zone in on exactly which one it was. What has been your proudest moment in your cycling career?
So as I said, there's a couple. I guess the main one is Olympic silver medal. Being able to say that you've been to the Olympics is cool. Being able to say that you came away with a medal, even cooler. My first world title in the points race in Paris was huge. You know, just the ability to say you're world champion is yeah, very very special. And because it's your first one, it means a huge amount. And then obviously now adding on Glasgow World Championships, because winning a world title, as I said, very special in front of a home crowd in the velodrome that you learn to ride. Yeah, that's very very special.
Perfect. So we've got a question, two questions that are pretty much the same. So we've got Kirsty from Banff Academy and also Petal, who's at Fordyce Primary School. And they're both asking, you kind of told us when you went into the velodrome and that switched from running into cycling, but when did you first start riding a bike?
I mean, I can't actually remember. I was a kid, so I'm going to say like 5-ish whenever my parents got round to teaching me. As I said, I inherited my brother's old bikes, so I could ride a bike from a young age, but I didn't, if you like, ride a bike properly until, how old was I? 24 is when I would say I like properly started riding a bike. So bit of time for you guys to get to grips to it. If any of you actually start now, you've got a massive head start on what I had.
Kaylee at Banff Academy. Kaylee, I'm going to keep your question to finish up with because I think it's a great question to round things off. Let's go for dice. Felix, what does it feel like to win, or what did it feel like to win? What is that feeling when you win?
It's such a weird feeling. It's sometimes there's almost an element of relief, which sounds bizarre. As a British cyclist, there is a huge amount of pressure because British cycling has produced so many world and Olympic champions. A lot of people just assume you're going to win because, you know, Britain always wins. So there's this huge amount of pressure, and then you put a huge amount of pressure on yourself because you go into that event wanting to win, and you've spent, you know, the last 12 months working towards this. So when it actually comes off, you've got this huge elation of like, I did it, I succeeded. So you're immensely happy because you've won, and you know, I think a lot of people can understand how it feels to win. You know, you just get this huge endorphin hit. And as I said, people are surprised when you say that there's a sense of relief because they don't expect that. But it is hard. It is hard work. So yeah, there's such a mixture of emotions. You feel exhausted, you feel drained, you feel relieved, you feel happy, excited. Yes, it's so much.
Yeah. So Charlie, I'm just looking at it further. Is it? Yeah, Charlie, your question further on was what your training stressful. I think Neah's answered that in terms of just how hard the effort is just to get to the point of winning medals. So we've just a few minutes left. So I'm conscious I'm trying to get everybody's question in. So I'm going to hold you to kind of word answers now, Neah, to try and get through them. So I know the answer to this, and I actually hid the photographs. I didn't use them when you sent them through. Have you ever hurt yourself badly when cycling?
Yes.
Yeah, there was probably the hidden wound at Glasgow. Yeah, you had a wee spill the week before Glasgow, but it just shows you had a spill, but you still came back and won the week after. Leighton for Dice asks, what medal do you feel is your biggest or the most satisfying win?
I think probably the Glasgow World title, because it's been such a target of, when I found out it was in Glasgow, I wanted to win the marathon, and I said for a long time leading into it, I wanted to win that. So to do it is, yeah, very satisfying.
Perfect. Rachel, do you ever or have you ever felt like just giving up? There have been
Oh yeah.
points. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I suppose what you've spoken about today is the resilience to push through those things and get to where you are today. Charles is asking, you know, I asked how it felt to win in Glasgow on the track, but I think Charles asked, what does it feel like to be in the track? And I suppose a child who's ridden a bike on a road and hasn't ridden the velodrome, can you just quickly explain that feeling?
So it's, in some sense, it's easier because there's less rolling resistance. So the effort you put out, you go faster for it. There's no wind, there's no potholes, it's beautifully smooth. It's quite monotonous because obviously you're doing lap after lap. If you're racing in a bunch, then there's lots of people around you and it's really chaotic and it's like a sensory overload because there's just kind of people and bodies. Around racing, they heat up the velodrome to make it warmer, because that means the conditions run faster. So when you walk into a velodrome on like race day, you get hit by this wall of heat. And also there's often like a DJ, so it's then really loud and there's this really kind of buzzing atmosphere. But compared to the road, yeah, it just feels so much quicker. For the same effort, you go so much quicker, and it's just, yeah, it's a lovely feeling to ride a Belgium.
Perfect. Sienna. No, I there should be one answer to this. So this is a test for you, and it should probably be Cumminston at Turf. But Sienna is asking, where is your favourite place to cycle?
I mean, Aberdeenshire, obviously. But the proviso is the weather needs to be good.
Perfect. Jake is asking, how long did it take to get your first win?
It depends on what level. So at kind of low level, I actually think I got a win fairly quickly. At higher levels, it took a lot longer. Obviously, to win a world title, it took me quite a few years. So and also it depends what you define as a win. So sometimes I'll set myself training targets of I want to achieve a certain power or a certain power for a certain time. And if you do that, that's a win. I really like giving myself targets because then you can be like, yes, I've done that. So yeah, it didn't take long.
Perfect. And our second last question, James at Fordyce is asking, and this is probably to help him out with the question. He's asking, how long have you been performing for? I suppose the question is, at what point did you feel the switch from I'm on the track for the first time, I'm doing track league at Glasgow a couple of times a week, to then thinking I'm now on that? When do you think that happened, that transition where you felt you were part of that pathway through to where you are now?
At a low level, I guess there was a revolution series, a kind of race series across the UK, which I got invited to take part in, and I think that was 2016. So that's when I really started. So I was racing against other GB athletes who were on the GB program, and that's where, yeah, kind of winter 2016. That's where I really started feeling that I was challenging, full-time athletes. I was working as a vet, and I was kind of challenging them. So that was when it kind of first happened. So that happened quite quickly. And then when I really felt that I was almost world class, that was the Commonwealth Games in Gold Coast in 2018. That for me is the pivotal kind of career moment of now I don't say I'm a vet that cycles. Now it's like I'm a cyclist that was a vet. And that was that kind of transition moment.
Perfect. So, final question, and before I do the final question, just thanks to all the pupils who put questions in, and all of you this afternoon for listening to what Neah has taken you through, and I hope you'll be able to follow her next year through to the Paris Olympics and all the other events that are happening. The Champions League is coming up, so again, if you're watching online, you can watch Neah in action around the world in the UCI track league, the Champions League, not the football one. This is the cycling one. But this final
Exactly.
question, and I'll be really harsh because it's almost impossible to answer Kaylee's question in 1 minute. But it's a question that we would always ask, certainly around about this time of year when we have Women and Girls Sport Week and there's a focus on Fit for Girls. What are the barriers, certainly for females, but overall, what are the barriers you think to accessing elite sport at the moment?
I think it's twofold. So I think one is just facilities. I suspect that none of the people watching today will have ridden a velodrome because the nearest velodrome is Glasgow. So if it was round the corner in Aberdeen, you probably would have a school trip to it. You're not going to have a school trip to go down to Glasgow. So it's facilities, and it's the same for any sport. If you've got the facilities there, much easier to go and have a go, and then find that you love the sport and then make the effort to do it. More in girls, I think there's a lot of, as I kind of alluded to it, of almost kind of stigmatism of, you need to look sporty or you need to look this, and you need to, body image stuff. And if you actually look at athletes, the Olympic Village is a perfect example because you have the best athletes in the world and you have such different body types, and each, all these athletes, they are incredible, but they have such different bodies. And I know when you're kind of younger, girls definitely, your body's changing anyway due to hormones, and there's nothing you can do about it. And then to do a sport and activity that's changing it further could potentially seem quite daunting. And I think it's trying to explain to people it's a good thing, having muscly legs, that's really beneficial. It's good for your body from a health point of view, and it's not something to be ashamed of. It's something that you should own and go, yeah, I've got strong legs. You should be impressed by it, rather than going, oh, my legs look a bit big. And I think that's something. One of the problems with kind of social media. There's so much kind of image, problems around image, and we definitely don't have time to get into that. But I think it's saying, if you enjoy something, don't be put off by negative comments around it. Oh, you're not very good, or oh, you look like that when you do it, or you've got to wear whatever the outfit is. I've got to wear lycra. Nobody wants to wear lycra. But you just got to own it and say, this is part of it. It's going to make me an Olympic champion or a world champion or whatever it is, and go, yeah, I'm going to do it. And I don't care what you say, because ultimately, if you're out there having fun and doing something you love, you're winning. you're not the person who's sat there judging. Don't be put off by people judging.
Perfect. Thank you, Neah. And I think the messages there would lift themselves across back to our respective schools today, across all careers and all opportunities that the young people who've been watching today will be looking at in the future, whether it's within sport or other career paths. So can I thank you on behalf of Cycle Aberdeenshire, which is obviously part of Live Live Aberdeenshire, Live Live Outdoors, on behalf of Aberdeenshire Council, to the two schools for getting involved today and those fantastic questions. And to you, Neah, thank you again for taking the time today to give us that insight, and we all wish you all the best over the next year, with that obviously a big ambition to get to the next Olympics, and we'll be looking forward to seeing that next summer. And we're obviously delighted to now have you on board next year once again as our Women and Girls Cycling Ambassador, and we look forward to seeing all the videos and photos from around the world to see that build up to next summer. So many thanks for coming along today. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for listening and having me.